Bushmead Primary School. So what I intend to cover, or we as staff intend to cover this evening, is I'm going to introduce the staff to you in a minute, just very briefly. I'm going to ask the senior staff just to say a little something, and then everyone else just to say hello as well. We will look at the vision, values and aims of Bushmead Primary School, and then I'll ask Mrs. Howitt. She will talk to you a little bit about the curriculum, and then Mrs. Preston, who I'll introduce you to in a minute, that she will then talk to you about Tapestry, which is something you may be familiar with or not. We'll then come back to me and I'll be looking at the admin stuff and talking to you about how administration works at school and telling you then what happens next. And we'll finish the session with questions. It usually takes around about half an hour, but we have no time restrictions, so we will stay as long as the questions maintain. So my name is Mr. Down. I'm the head teacher here at Bushmead Primary School. I've been a head teacher now since 2011. This is my third school, and this is the end of my 5th year at Bushmead. So when your children enter, that will be the beginning of my 6th year. I have to say I feel privileged to be head teacher of this school, particularly at the moment with the difficult situation that we've got going on. I think the school staff have really proved themselves to be an amazing team that works together. That's the early years staff right the way through the school. We're currently open to about 100 children, due to go up to about 140 tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, on Monday. We've been looking at the guidelines, ensuring that all of the children are safe, and I'm particularly proud again to say that all the children that are in early years, we have around 30 of them in our school, are socially distancing, are enjoying their learning in school, and they're doing it in a very safe way. But I just want to introduce you quickly to Mr. Leonard. So Mr. Leonard, if I can just ask you to say hello. I'm just got to unmute him. Sorry, he can't hear me. And for some reason, Mr. Leonard, I can't unmute you. So could you please just give a little wave, Mr. Leonard? Oh, there we go. You're there.
Am I there now?
You are on, Mr. Leonard.
Ray, get in. Okay. Yes, I'm Mr. Leonard, and I'm the deputy head, and I've been at Bushmead as, I think, since almost as long as Mrs. Howitt, which is quite a long while. There you go, that's me.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I just introduced you to Mrs. Howitt. She's the early years lead. But sorry, back to me. But before I introduce you to Mrs. Howitt, just to say that currently Mrs. Howitt is away from school and she'll be starting a phased return in September. We felt it was important to share that with you. Mrs. Howitt has, had cancer, knocked it out of the park, been an absolute example to everyone at our school as to how to act and to tackle things and to have a positive mindset, which is one of our values in school. But Mrs. Howitt will be on a phased return, coming back 2 days a week in September, and Mrs. Rodriguez, who I will introduce you to in a minute, who's been a long-serving member of staff and worked in many years at our at Bushmead, will be working with Mrs. Howitt and fading out as Mrs. Howitt phases in. So Mrs. Howitt, if you'd just like to say a quick hello.
Good evening, everybody. Well, Mr. Dan asked me to say a little bit about myself, and I was trying to work out how many years I've been in teaching. And I just added it all up and I was like, wow, 22 years. So I've been teaching for 22 years. 17 years of those have been at Bushmead Primary School, and 7 of those years have been within the early years department. And it's quite emotional me coming back, but I tell you what, working in early years is the most privileged position that I've ever been in. I absolutely adore it, and I can't wait to come back and teach your children.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Howitt. If I just introduce you now to Mrs. Preston, who will be the other class teacher working in Oak class.
Hi everybody, I'm Mrs. Preston. I've been at Bushmead now for about 6 years, I think, 7 years maybe. This will be my 6th year in early years. I too have been teaching for a really long time. I think I'll be going into my 21st year of teaching come September. Most of that has been within early years. So as Mrs. Howitt said, I can't wait to meet all of your children. And Bushmead really is a fantastic place to be. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mrs. Preston. And if I now just quickly come to Mrs. Rodriguez. Hello, Mrs. Rodriguez, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Mrs. Rodriguez, and I've been teaching for about 20 years in Key Stage 1 and in Key Stage 2, also including early years. And I'm very much looking forward to teaching in Ash class in September alongside Mrs. Howitt.
Lovely, thank you ever so much. Now, I've got this one's a bit more tricky because I've got to find everybody now. There's a lot of people. So I'm going to introduce you now to the support staff that all work into early years and just ask them to say a little hello. So first of all, Mrs. Crawford, if you would like to just say hello.
Hi, I'm Miss Crawford. I've been working in early years. This will be my 5th year.
Lovely. And Mrs. Palmer, just bear with me, Mrs. Palmer. I'll tell you when I can find you. There we go, Mrs. Palmer. I found you.
Hello, I'm Mrs. Palmer, and I think I've been working at Bushmead for about 6 years.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mrs. Palmer. And then Mrs. Curtis. Oh, I found you straight away. There you are, Mrs. Curtis.
Hi, I'm Miss Curtis. I'm quite new to the team actually. I've been working in early years for about 18 months, but thoroughly enjoy it.
Lovely. And we are coming also to Mrs. Howlett. There we go, Mrs. Howlett. I found you as well.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Howlett, and I've been at Bushmead 19 years, so quite a long while.
Lovely. And I'm scrolling and I'm looking for Mrs. Perry. I know she's in here. There you are, Miss Perry. Miss Perry, I've found you. There you go, Miss Perry. Oh, now Miss Perry's been muted. Just bear with me 1 second. Oh, we've got to have a little bit of confusion. Wait for Mrs. Perry. There we go, Miss Perry.
Hello. Hi everybody, lovely to meet you. I'm Mrs. Perry. I am the Senker at Bushmead Primary School. I've been teaching a bit to 20 odd years now. Taught in mainstream schools, just come from a special needs school, and I've been at Bushmead since last September, and I've also been working in early years 1 day a week. So I look forward to seeing you all in September, hopefully.
Fantastically. Now, brilliant. Now, I need to introduce you to 2 more people, but the first is probably the most important person in school. So I'm going to introduce you to Mrs. Kofi, or Mrs. Coffey. See, I always get that a little bit wrong. Mrs. Coffey is the lady that manages the office, along with Mrs. Durant. And Mrs. Coffey is the person that you will most likely come into contact with if you have any initial contact with the school and any queries and questions. So, Mrs. Coffey, would you just like to say a quick hello? I think I've spotlighted you.
Hello everybody, welcome to Bushmead. Looking forward to meeting you all.
Lovely, thank you ever so much. And I've got one more person if I can find them. Do you know, this is a lot easier when we're all sat in the front of a hall, so I think we're going to go back to the hall version next year. But I would just like to introduce you to Mrs. Plowman. She's one of our governors in school.
Hello everybody, welcome to Bushmead. And I've been a governor at Bushmead since 1996. Before some of you were even born, probably. So I hope you'll enjoy your time at Bushmead.
Fabulous. Thank you. So I hope, parents, what you get a sense of is the fact that there is a huge amount of experience with the adults that will be supporting your children, whether it be in the management, whether it be in the leadership, whether it be in the actual staff team, whether it be in the office. We have a huge amount of experience in early years and through the rest of the school. And your children really are going to have an amazing time for the next 7 years when they're at Bushmead Primary School. But to move on, a little bit about our vision and what we believe here at Bushmead. We believe in working together with you to ensure that children enjoy their learning. We don't want children coming to school that are just learning. We want them to enjoy their learning. And the way we do that is by having a supportive environment for them to work in, but we also believe in an experience-rich curriculum. Now, essentially what that means is children will be doing stuff. You may have noticed if you've been past our school in the past that we have a minibus out the front, and that's just an example of how we believe getting children out of the school to do some form of experience, to do something that they can then use in the classrooms in their learning. And I know Mrs. Preston and Mrs. Howard will talk a little bit more about that in a minute in the curriculum. But we have a core set of values, and we call them our Thrive values. These were developed several years ago with the children, the staff, the governors and parents, where we looked at what we felt was the most core and central part of our school. And top is community. They're in no particular order, but I do think it's appropriate that community is the top. We believe in being a community school. A growth mindset is the second value, and your children will learn a lot more about these values as they go through our school. We have a weekly assembly that focuses on one of them, and they also learn about it in their classes, and it weaves, I don't like to say a golden thread, but it is a golden thread through our school, looking at the growth mindset. We wish to inspire children. We want them to have pride in themselves, their school, their families. We want them to achieve, and we want them to aspire. We want our children, by the end of their time at Bushmead, to really have an aspiration to take their lives in whichever direction they wish to take them, but to give them the opportunity to start that. So the journey so far. We've met many of your children. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it in the normal way that we've done it in the past, where the early years staff would have gone into the settings of nurseries and preschools and that have actually sat and worked with your children so that they actually had an understanding and tick and became a familiar face. But we have talked about them with the vast majority of our settings. We have children coming from about 15 settings this year. So they've had largely through video conferencing. So the staff and Miss Perry and Mrs. Preston and Mrs. Howitt have talked to the vast majority of preschools, so we know a lot about your children. This is the next part of your journey into Bushmead, tonight's meeting. Clearly, we would much prefer to be doing that on face-to-face, but we are still doing the same process. What would have happened as you walked in this evening is you would have received an information pack. It's a paper pack that you would receive. It's all on our website, on new joiners section on our website, but you'll receive all of this out and it will be mailed out to you in the next couple of days. That information gives you lots of information about the curriculum, gives you lots of information about our school, gives you lots of information about how we take money, lots of information about what things your children can access. And that will be coming to you shortly. Your first week in school, again, under normal circumstances, children would have done some of these activities before the July or the August break, but because of the current circumstances, we can't do that. So in your first week in school, we'll be offering you and your child a stay and play session so that they can come in the morning into the early years setting. They can stay with you in the early years and play and experience what sort of environment our early years staff offer. In the afternoon, the early years staff will then come and visit you in your home. We feel that's really important because the children get to see you as parents welcome our staff into your home. And that's a really important part to show the children that we are safe and that we are adults that will look after them. And it starts to build teachers and children. It also gets us to know, that it gives us the opportunity, or the staff the opportunity, to get to know you as parents a little bit better, because you know your children, we don't, and we want to know what makes them tick, we want to know what they enjoy, we want to know what troubles them, so that we can then work with that as we're into school. During the second week, you will either be offered a morning session or an afternoon session. If you're a morning, you'll be in for the morning, and the children will go to lunch, and then you will pick them up. The children then, the other half of the children will come in for lunch, then they will have the afternoon session with us. And then in the third week, the pupils will be in full time from the first day on that third week. We believe that the second week is really important. At Bushmead, we've always spent a lot of time trying to get to know your children in a small group environment. We have tailored it this year and we've amended it and adjusted it, responding to feedback from parents, but we still feel it's really important to have a limited set of children in so that our staff can really get to know your children. What we find is by half term, the benefits of that getting to know, that bonding process, are incredible, because the children's learning shoots from the first time they really start in their week 3 or 4 full time. They know the staff, they feel comfortable with the staff, they feel safe with the staff, and they are ready to learn. So the school day looks a little bit like this. Children will come in at 8:45 for registration, and they will do some warm up for learning. Now, if you think Joe Wicks, but tone it down a little bit, they'll be doing something physical just to get their bodies moving, get them in a learning place, a place their body, the blood flowing around their body, all the research showing that really helps children for learning. And then they'll do a little bit of phonics. They'll do busy learning, which I know Mrs. Howard and Mrs. Preston are going to talk about later, but it's where the children freely move around the unit, accessing different parts of learning. Children will have lunch and come back after lunch. And again, they will have a short session where they're doing an activity together of numbers. They then do some more busy learning. They have a story at the end of the day, and children at Bushmead will have a story read to them even when they're in year 6. We feel it's really important that children can just get immersed in a story, not having to worry about the understanding or the spelling, punctuation, grammar, all the technical stuff, just to be immersed in a story. We believe that that's really important, so that it inspires and really fires the imagination of children. So every child at Bushmead will be read a story pretty much every day. Clearly, the stories as they go through the school, we have a set number of stories that we go through, so those children actually get different genres and different experiences. It is then home time that you will pick your children up on the same place as you drop them off in the morning. Just to mention free flow snack, your children will be given a snack when they're in early years, but it's not a snack that they all have at the same time. Children in early years, we really encourage independence, we promote independence, and we try to teach independence. So children will be able to access snack on their own. They are only allowed a limited amount, obviously, they can't keep coming back all and more and more, but they will then have a system where they can access their snack. Now, I don't want to freak anyone out here, but actually early years children will make toast. By the end of early years, they will be given a toast license, and they will have been taught how to make toast safely, where they do it all with adult supervision, of course, but it just shows the level of independent skills that the staff, the fantastic staff that we have in early years, actually give your children. Uniform. We do feel uniform is very important at Bushmead. It is grey trousers or skirt, a white polo shirt, and then a green jumper or cardigan. We do ask that long hair is tied back. I think all of these things are fairly standard, but we ask for black shoes. No earrings, nail polish, but it's important, particularly in early years, children will go out in all weathers. So a set of welly boots and a waterproof coat are essential. We do go out. We believe that it's important for children to go out all the time. Unless it's absolutely throwing it down, your children will go out every day. We would like to have a PE kit, which is black shorts and a white t-shirt and some form of cheap plimsolls. Please don't spend a lot of money on plimsolls, because at the beginning of the year with early years, it does take a little while to get changed, as you can well imagine, with 20 odd children all getting changed at the same time. So most of the PE will be done in barefoot to start with, but we will be looking to get, as the year goes on, the children will be putting their own shoes on and doing PE outside as well. We do also ask for a spare change of clothes. At the age your children are, there are the occasional accidents, usually due to excitement. I'm so into doing this learning, I forgot to go to the toilet. So if we always prefer, we have lots of spares, but we would always prefer that children have got their own clothes to put on, because children generally feel far more comfortable putting a pair of their own underwear on and a spare pair of trousers or skirt than putting school ones on. You'll be given a book bag and a PE bag as you first start school in one of those first sessions. And in all the years that I've been teaching, this bottom one sounds the most obvious, but it's the one that gets forgotten the most. Please, please, please name everything. Twice, 3 times, 4 times, just name it. I don't care if it's written across here in indelible marker pen. Please name everything. We have so many conversations with parents where teachers are very gracious and hold a straight face, where the parent says, but it's green and it's a 32. We've got about 20 green jumpers that are size 32 in the classroom, and it is very difficult to find. So please name everything. It would help us hugely. So I'm going to pass over now, if I can find her, to Mrs. Howitt. I hope she's still here. Yes, there she is. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about the early years curriculum. Mrs. Howitt.
Hi again, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the curriculum and what teaching looks like in the early years setting. So Mrs. Preston and I work very closely together on the planning for each of the children and their needs. And we do that by using something called the Early Years Framework. Now, during their time with us, your children will be learning a variety of new skills. They'll be requiring lots and lots and lots of different knowledge, and we will see them demonstrating this within our setting and understanding what they've been taught, which is really, really important. Now, as I said, this is done through the Early Years Framework, and within the Early Years Framework, there are 7 areas of learning. Now, children mostly, first of all, develop their communication and language skills first, physical development, their personal social skills. They're the ones that normally become first in their learning. And we call these areas the prime areas, and they're really, really essential for future learning. The children need to have a good grasp of these to make great progress. Now, these prime areas, they really do underpin the children's future learning. Once they've got a great foundation in those, we then move on to the next 4 areas, and they're called the specific areas, and they are the literacy, the maths, the understanding the world, and the expressive arts and design. Now, within our setting, you know, we really, really encourage and make sure there's opportunities for our children to learn by exploration and by playing and being active all the time, and critical thinking and problem solving, you know, working things out for themselves, you know, getting to an end goal, which is really, really important. Now, the learning in our setting takes place inside, but also outside, and that is really, really valuable. And we feel very passionate, Mrs. Preston and my team, and I feel really passionate about the fact that children need to learn from real life experiences. So, for example, if we were going to do something in maths about money, you know, we'd take the children on a walk to the shops, we'd take some money, we'd let them buy their own snacks, because it's really, really important for children to see these skills in real life contexts. If we're talking about growing, for example, you know, we'd get the minibus, we'd go to the garden centre, we'd go and buy some seeds, and the children have real ownership of those, bring them back, and they would plant them, and they watch that growing and development. It's all about, for us, developing those real life skills in a practical way. Now, when we teach within our setting, we do it in a number of ways. So there might be some whole class teaching where there'll be myself or Mrs. Preston or one of my teaching team at the front, you know, delivering some learning. Or it might be some learning that's done in small groups where we work with a small group of pupils. Or it might be we're doing some one-to-one teaching with pupils. Or you might even see us in the play with the children using our questioning techniques to extend pupils' learning, which is also a really, really valuable tool. I'd like the next slide, please. So while your children are doing all these wonderful things in our setting, you know, how do we document that? How do we write it down? How do you make sure that your children make the suitable progression they need to within their learning? Now, we do that by recording our observations and what your children do within something called a learning journal. And in a moment, Mrs. Preston's going to talk a little bit more about what the learning journal looks like within our early years setting. Now, who contributes to this learning journal? Now, obviously your children do, because they're going to be doing all these wonderful things within our setting, and we'll be taking photos and little videos and writing observations. So your children are contributing to their learning and to their learning journal. We are contributing as teachers, because we're taking observations and writing things down about what your children can do and also what they need to do next. But also our teaching assistants, they're doing that alongside us. Our dinner supervisors, so maybe at lunchtime, if we're thinking about physical development, you know, possibly your children weren't so confident about using a knife and fork, for example, but then suddenly they can use it, they can cut, they can hold the food, and they've had that wow moment. So it's really important, you know, our dinner supervisors can capture things like that. Now, we only have your children like a small amount of time. You guys have them for lots of time at home. So we want you to contribute to the children's learning journeys, you know, by photos and observations. But Mrs. Preston's going to go into a little bit more about that in a moment. But with us all working together, we can get a whole picture of your child, where they're at, but also where they need to go next to make sure that they reach their full potential. Now, we also use, within our setting, workbooks. So when we do small group written activities and number activities, these are recorded in our workbooks. So we have workbooks and learning journeys to make sure that we encapsulate, I suppose, everything about your child. Right, Mrs. Preston, can I hand over to you, please?
You can, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Tapestry, which is the online learning journal system that we use at Bushmead. Now, lots of you may be familiar with Tapestry itself or some other form of online learning journal, and that's where we record all of the children's learning that's happening in Bushmead. So it shows a snapshot of the children's achievements, of their progress in relation to that early years framework that Mrs. Howitt was talking about. Now, not absolutely everything that they do will be recorded within that journey, but it will be, you know, it might be an observation a day or an observation a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, but and generally there should be something in there each week that shows something that your child has been doing. So us as class teachers will be joining to that, midday supervisors and teaching assistants, like we said. But it is a two-way process, so we really need you to add things onto Tapestry for us as well. So you might add on an observation of something that's happened at the weekend. Maybe you've been out and done something nice that you want to tell us about. Maybe an activity that you've done at home. you might comment on one of the observations that we've added, because you'll get to see that obviously as they go on. So they might come home and talk about it to you, and then you can put a comment on there as well. You can reply to observations that the staff have made. It's really, really important that it is a two-way process. We also use it actually to communicate with you. So we have a page set up which is just called Early Years News, and that will be linked to all of you, and we will put newsletters, we might put a roundup of the week on there, we might put reminders of things that are happening on that page as well. So it's really important that you keep up to date with Tapestry and what's happening on there as well. If I could have the next slide, please. So just to let you know, because it is an online journal, only the staff within Bushmead who have been given access to that will be able to see your children's learning journals. So it's not something that every single member of staff in Bushmead can see. It's just the staff at school who have been given logins, and you yourselves will be given a secure password to access your child's account. You will set that up when you fill in the paperwork. We then send you an email that logs you on, and you set up a password that only you will be able to access your child's journey only. Now, occasionally, and this is how it's said, that we do work as a whole class in small groups. So there might be times when you will have photographs within your child's learning journey that might have other children in the background or within the group activity. Now, if this is something that you don't want to happen, you don't want your child to appear in anybody else's journal, then you need to make sure that you let us know, because we will keep a record of that, and we will make sure then that if ever we're taking photographs of a whole class or a group activity, that your child is not included in that, so that we keep up with your preferences there. So you just need to let us know. But in the form that comes out, there will be a kind of like a disclaimer on there that says you agree to let your children be in other photos. But that's it. It's really fantastic. I'm sure lots of you use something similar already at your preschools and nurseries. Here's just an example. So on the left of your screen, you can see a photograph that we've added from school with a description underneath of what the activity or what the photograph was. You can see here that we've linked it at the bottom to the early years framework, and then the parent has actually then commented on that photograph underneath there. And then on the right hand side of the screen, you can see a photograph here that the parent has added from home about something that their child has been doing, and then we can then comment on that as well. So it really is a two-way process between ourselves and yourselves. So, but it's fun. We've really enjoyed using it this year. It's been the first year that we've used it, and we've really, really enjoyed it. It's been great for interactions and things, parent interactions. So it's been fantastic.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mrs. Preston. Back to me then. I think I've got a bit of the boring stuff to do at the end. But school meals, if your child's in early years, year 1 or year 2, under the government funded scheme, everybody is entitled to a free school meal. So the children can bring a packed lunch if they wish to, but they're also entitled to a free school meal. That's separate to whether you're on any form of income support, and you can then claim something different. But there'll be some information about that in your pack. Because that enables the school to access funding for your child. So if you are on any form of income support, there is a form, please do let us know. Nobody else needs to know, but it enables us to access over £1,000 that we need to use to support your child. Again, a government funded system called Pupil Premium. So early years will be free school meal. They have 3 options. They're taught to be very independent. So the early years staff, when part of teaching time, will take them to the hall, to the main hall, where they will choose from 3 different options. They have access to a salad bar, which they can choose from, and they make their own dinners. They don't make them, sorry. They make their own plates up. They then take them, eat themselves, clear away themselves. So they self-manage, and clearly there are staff there to support them throughout that. All children nationally get free milk until they turn 5. They don't have to have it, but they will all be offered it. After they turn 5, then you can still pay to provide the school milk into the Cool Milk scheme for schools. But again, we will provide you with information about that, and should you wish to have that all the way through your child's school life, they can still access milk. We do offer Forest, which is our wraparound care. That is operated in the small hall. It's by the staff that we employ here at Bushmead. It's not an external company. We believe that we want to make sure that the provision from whenever a child arrives at school to whenever they leave school is completely within our care. And we operate from 7:30 in the morning to 6 p.m. There's various different time slots that you can sign up for. You obviously would just pay for what you use. Children can have breakfast, and that's about 8 o'clock if they're in Forest by then, and they can also have a meal in the evening, which I believe is served about 5:30 if they're still in school then. So those information about that will be in your welcome pack. If it's something that you'd like to come and see, then as long as it's open in September, and that's a bit that I have to caveat because I'm not sure whether it will be open. We're not able to run it under the current restrictions, but I'm hoping that by September we will be able to run that. I'd encourage you to come and have a look. Just come and see how much the children enjoy being in our forest. It's a very different environment. It's not school. It's a very enjoyable environment, and the staff there spend a lot of time talking to children about what they would like to do and then providing a range of different activities for them to do. More of the boring stuff, but I'm afraid at Bushmead we're totally online as much as we possibly can be. So we use a system called Parent Pay for all payments, and there will details be given to you that about in September. That's really for early years, really if there are any small trips that we ask for a small contribution towards, and also some snack contribution that we just asked for at the beginning of the year, and throughout the year, just to provide a healthy snack for your children. Lots of different things. They cut tomatoes up, they have peppers, they have cheese, they have a whole range of different things that they provide for the children in early years. Attendance is really important, and I feel that we've put it in here. I feel so strongly that we need children in school all the time, and if they miss a little bit of school, then actually they miss a little bit of education, and where some people perhaps think just a day here and a day there doesn't make much difference. But the planning for early years is very much, and all the way through the school, is built on a sequence of teaching. So if a child misses one day, and clearly if they're ill, we don't want children in school when they're poorly, but if they are just a little bit under the weather, do you know what, we'd much prefer them in school. We will always send them home if they are, not well enough. But if they miss that one day, they've got to go and catch that day back up. So we really value attendance at Bushmead, and our expectation is that 96% of the time or better, children are in. I'm afraid we can't authorise any holidays because we're a local authority school. We follow the local authority guidance on that. Sadly, I have this year had to issue 1 or 2 penalty notices where parents have taken children on holiday during term time. That's not something that's permitted. If there are any specific circumstances to which you feel it's really important that the children will be out of school, please come and talk to me. There is a form to fill in, but please come and talk to me. I think Mrs. Preston and Mrs. Howard already talked about communication. We try to communicate as much as we possibly can. We do have, in early years, they have weekly reminders. We have the whole school, we have a weekly reminders that's sent out by email at the end of the week, just reminding everyone what's happening next week. We have newsletters that go out every other week. Letters are all sent out electronically. And we obviously have parent-teacher consultations. Again, we're not sure what that's going to look like, but it should be the first one in October. We're not sure what it's going to look like in October. We will let you know. But we try and do everything electronically through email. If that's an issue to you and you're not able to access online emails, then please do come and see Mrs. Coffey in the office, and we will, of course, provide you with a paper alternative for that. That said, we know email addresses change, and it might sound obvious, but please tell us as soon as something changes, because we've often had the situation where we've been sending emails to parents and they change their email address a week or 2 or 3 weeks ago and they've missed something really important. So please, please, please let us know if there are any changes. We have our website, we have a Facebook page. Please look at that, sign up for that. That's got all sorts of things that are happening in school all the time, and we try to keep that as regularly updated as possible. So what happens now? What happens now is I'm going to show you a short video of what life is like in early years. What we would normally be doing is stopping the presentation in the main hall, walking you down to early years and showing you early years. Clearly we can't do that, and actually we want you to see what it's really like with children in it. So we've put together a video. It's actually last year's children that shows you a day in the life of Bushmead Children for Reception. Now I'm going to stop videoing this now because I need to flick off of this to get the video working. So please bear with me just 1 minute.